Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be making a prepper's soap. A friend of mine asked me if I could just make them a basic soap, no scents, no fragrances or anything like that. Just something they can use to wash their hands, clothing, things like that, and just stockpile on a shelf and leave there if they need to. So I figure if you're going to be washing your clothes in like a stream, maybe having something that you can make a hole in the soap to be a soap on a rope option might be a good thing. So after I make my soap, it's going to get a little bit more solid because this is a fast setting soap. I'm going to go ahead and stick my straws in there that I've already cut, and that's going to be able to be removed, and it'll leave a nice smooth bored hole in the soap. So that way you could either attach rope if you want to or remove it, just depending on whatever you have going on. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting up all my wonderful stuff. I'm going to set this aside. Now, you need to make sure that you have safety precautions because handling lye is not really the safest thing in the world. It can melt your skin off, so FYI. Then I've got my water. Now, water is used to dissolve the lye. So I've already decided I was going to split my batch, so I've got my water and I've got my other part of my water weight in milk. I really love this recipe. This is my most favorite one of all. So one of the things that happens when you mix the lye with your water, first of all, it gets very, very hot. It also produces a lot of vapor, so make sure that you are in a well-ventilated area. Again, put on safety gloves because you don't want that lye to melt your skin off. I've seen it happen. I've had a couple burns. That was great fun. But I had a friend of mine who also had some severe burns as well from lye, and they actually scarred. So mine are okay because I observe safety rules. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is put the water in our polypropylene container because that won't melt. It's perfectly safe to use with lye. Make sure you are in a well-ventilated area so when you mix all those things together that you don't end up breathing those vapors in. Now, the reaction with the lye and the water together creates a lot of heat. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be using what they call a heat transfer method. Heat transfer method is where you mix your hot lye water solution in with your oils and it will melt your oils, and I've got this as a pure coconut oil soap. So mixing this up, I'm going to let that clear up just a little bit. I want to make sure that it all gets dissolved. It's still going to be extremely hot, but that heat from my lye water solution is going to melt my oils. Now, I like to split my water amount for my soap and put chilled milk off to the side. The reason I do that is because that lye can actually burn the sugars and stuff in the milk. And you definitely do not want curdled milk in your soap. That's just not good. Just don't do that. And while that's kind of clearing up, I better talk about the gel. Now, gel happens when a soap basically cooks itself. So that added heat from the lye mixing with the oils creates the soap. So when you have a lot of heat, that soap tends to saponify faster. Saponification is where the oils completely turn to soap and the lye completely disappears. So you definitely need lye to make your soap, but once it's soap, the lye disappears. So it's kind of cool, you know, with that. I'm not going to be sticking this in a fridge because of I want it to gel. I want it to have that added heat. I want it to kind of go through its complete phase. And again, because I'm adding my hot lye water to my oils, it's going to create even more heat, so that's going to cook it. Now, if you wanted to avoid having a gel or a partial gel in your soap, stick your soap immediately in the fridge or the freezer. That will help to stop that reaction from happening. And this is clearing up and it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that so far. I'm going to go ahead and just pour my lye water solution over my spatula. That will help prevent any kind of splashing. I don't want to have any splatters. I'm going to stick that aside. And as you can tell, it's starting to melt all of that coconut oil. So this is that heat transfer method I was talking about. We're just going to keep stirring it. Let everything just completely dissolve. Melt, I should say. And once that gets completely melted, I don't want to see any chunks in there, then I will go ahead and add my liquid milk. Now this will make it so that the milk doesn't burn and the soap will stay a very beautiful ivory white. So it's really, really pretty. I really love this recipe, guys. This is definitely by far my favorite one. I use it all the time for everything. It just works so well. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my milk, and I'm just going to keep stirring it by hand. Now this soap does set up extremely fast. Most people, for their soap, they have to wait overnight or sometimes 24 hours, sometimes a couple days before their soap sets up. But mine tends to get very solid within 6 hours. So it's one of the reasons I like using individual soap molds, because if I use a loaf mold, I will be unable to cut my soap in time most times because I get distracted because I'm me. So I want to have nice good bars of soap instead of a big brick. So I don't want soap bricks, we just want soap bars. Alright, that is all mixed in by hand. Everything looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my blender. I'm going to burp it to make sure all the bubbles get out of there. And I'm going to mix this to a very light trace. I'm going to hand stir as well. If I over trace it, the soap becomes way too thick and it doesn't pour into the mold very well. So I like to hand mix at least twice as much than I stick blend. That way all of the oils get incorporated and gets turned into soap, and then I don't have a separation where I'll have oils and soap. So I like to hand mix quite a bit, but I also need to get it to a light trace, because that agitation helps make the soap be a soap faster. And that looks pretty good. The trace is kind of where I can leave a trail. You can kind of see the drippings. So that is my light trace. I am happy with this. I'm going to just keep stirring to make sure that everything is all incorporated and I don't see any oil sitting on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and call that good. I'm going to go ahead and remove my blender from my batch. I could probably actually maybe trace that a little bit more, but this will be fine for right now. Everything will work. Alright, now I get to go ahead and pour it into my molds. So I've got my soap molds all set up right here. And I have got my straws ready to go. Just going to go ahead and start pouring. And I want to make sure I can get this all the way to the very top. Kind of makes it so that every bar stays the same size. And I can always take a spoon and kind of spoon in spots that look like they might not quite be full enough. And that looks pretty good. Now, this is going to start setting up and get thicker very, very quick. Kind of almost like before your eyes. It's pretty cool. I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of scrape the top of the soap. That's going to take any excess off, and it's going to leave every bar about the exact same size, which I do want to have. Sometimes this likes to have a little bit more excess than I had planned, so I like to scoop that into a separate container if I need to. And that is already thickening up. I don't need to tap it because it was so thin when I poured it. So I'm going to be happy with that. And this one, I can tell I need to spoon that out. So I'm just going to take a little bit, spoon that into a smaller container if I need to. This one also. Now you can see that's already starting to get pretty thick even in my container there. I'm going to go ahead and give it a little scrape again. My fumble fingers. My goodness. Sometimes I don't even know how things tend to ending out looking good. Oh my gosh. Lord help my traveling soul. Alright, that looks pretty good. Go ahead and set that aside. Let me go ahead and give that a little bit of a wiggle. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to need to sit here and just kind of watch it set up. Great fun, right? Yeah, watching soap get thick. Alright, so we'll be back in a couple minutes and I'll go ahead and stick the straws in there as soon as it starts getting thick enough to do that. Okay, so we're back. I took my gloves off because this is going to need a little bit of finesse. These have solidified quite a bit more. There's very little wiggle to them at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and take my straws and stick them just straight down into that mold. I'm going to tap it, make sure that it goes all the way through because I want it to make sure that I have a clean hole all the way through. Go ahead and stick that in there. That looks pretty good. Do the same thing here. I'm going to try and make sure that it is straight up and down. Give it a little tap to be sure. This is pretty much how we get those, or anyway, how I get those holes in the back of my soap. You can use metal straws. They're reusable instead of plastic ones like I'm using here. But it's just kind of up to you. And again, because my soap gets so hard so quick, using a metal straw just really isn't the best idea, 'cause chances are that trying to cut little holes in that will actually break the soap up instead of make a nice smooth cut. So that is why I'm using the straws. And again, also why I'm using individual soap molds. Because if I don't pay attention to time and get distracted like I always do, then it would be too late and I wouldn't be able to cut these soaps. So alrighty then, that's just how they're going to look. I'm going to go ahead and stick them in the back room and let them do their thing, and we'll be back in about 6 hours or so. Now these will need to still cure for 4 weeks afterwards. The curing process lets all the water that we've added into the soap come back out of it, makes it more solid, longer lasting, better lather, just a lot of cool stuff. And we'll be back with the unmolding. Hello everyone, welcome back. So it has been about 10 hours, maybe longer, I don't know, I lost track. I don't want to admit it, but let's be honest. So these soaps are really hard. I can't indent my finger in there, which is perfectly fine. Now, if I had made a soap loaf, I would be unable to cut this at all, so I would end up with a brick. And instead, I've got bars, so yay for me. Alright, so what's happened, if you look on the back here, it started to sweat. So that water is evaporating back out of the soap. Now you don't want to do this in a room where you have a water fountain like I do, because it can cause things like that to happen. It can also cause what we call a soda ash, where it leaves a little bit of a soot-like layer. If I can bring the camera in on the soap a bit, you can kind of see that ashy, sooty looking layer there. It's just a superficial thing. It doesn't mean anything. There's no harm done with that. All I have to do is spray it with alcohol and it removes just fine. So it's just the way the soap will react with the water in the air as it's drying, as it's setting up mostly. So now I've got to go ahead and remove the straws from the soap. Now again, because these are so solid, those straws kind of like to get stuck in there. So I'm going to have to try and be very careful and pull those straws back out. And there I have a perfectly bored hole in this soap where a rope can be attached to if my friend wants to do that or not. So this soap just turned out a beautiful ivory white. It's just gorgeous. This is going to work perfect for what they want to do with it. It's just a great all-purpose soap that can be used for literally anything. I actually use this same exact soap recipe for my hair. So if I have African American frizzy curly hair, and if I can use this on my hair and it turns out beautiful, I can tell you what, guys, this stuff is amazing. I just love working with it. So much fun to make soap anyway. And then, you know, you're making something that's all natural. There's no chemicals or anything in there. So it just makes it so much friendlier on the environment as well as just using the resources that are natural around us. So this has turned out really nice. And if you want to get a hold of me and purchase items like this, which I am willing to ship, so definitely send me a message. I have a Facebook page. It's called Basic Homesteading and Survival. I try and keep my Facebook page and my YouTube page name the same because if you're like me, you probably forget but don't want to admit it. So be sure to ask me questions. If you have anything you'd like to purchase, definitely message me there and I will get back to you. But for now, if you guys like this video, come back for more adventures and tips and tricks later on. Bye now.